Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are we've got a big show for you today. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Wednesday. There is a lot going on in the world of sports. We're going to start off our show talking about some of the NBA action from last night, starting in the West with the Minnesota Timberwolves falling to the Denver Nuggets in a battle between Jokic, the MVP, three-time MVP now, and Rudy Gobert, who after this year is now a four-time Defensive Player of the Year award. We'll break down that matchup on in Game 5. Then we'll move into the other game from last night. The Knicks took on the Pacers. A bounce-back effort for them after getting blown out in Game 4. They return the favor back at home in Madison Square Garden. We'll break that game down, break down what the rest of the series might look like after these teams trade devastating blows with each other. We'll talk a little bit about WNBA. Caitlin Clark, she made her debut last night for the Indiana Fever. So we'll talk about how her debut went, what we can look at for the future, any positives for professional women's basketball game, and then we will move in baseball. I have my power rankings. We're going to go over them. It's been about 2 weeks since I did my power rankings, so we'll take a look at what has changed, what's going on in the world of baseball, and what our show with the NFL schedule release. Stuff is getting very slowly all day today. We should have an entire schedule by the end of the day. But what we do now, we know a lot of the primetime games, we know all of the international games, and we know all of the Thanksgiving, Christmas, Black Friday games. So we'll go over some of those matchups, see what we think of the schedule so far. But before we get into all of that, remember, if you would like to be than we are, all you have to do is go to GSMC.net. Again, that is GSMCPodcast.net. The link is in the description. If you need an even bigger part of the show, we appreciate anything you do. If you have a massive donation, that donation message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see all of your you have. Like I was saying, we're going to start our show with some baseball. We're going to get right into it with a really interesting conversation I was having with a friend of mine last night. The MVP was the Defensive Player of the Year. This isn't something that happens all too often, where you have the MVP, Nikola Jokic, taking on the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. Even rare when they get matched up against each other positionally. But this is one of those things that's happening in a nice matchup, and Rudy Gobert is getting cooked. Just putting it lightly, Rudy Gobert has not been standing much of a chance in Game 5 against Nikola Jokic. When Nikola Jokic decided to turn the Jets on in the middle of down, especially in Game 5, he had a masterclass last night. 40 points, 13 assists, and the big number here outside of the counting stats, no turnovers. 13 assists and 0 turnovers is insane. He's moving up the leaderboards for all-time playoffs assists as a center, I believe 4 right now, all-time. He's on the way to probably the most all-time, the pace that he is on. It's insane to watch him work. He's able to, it doesn't matter if you have Rudy Gobert, who played good defense on him. There were plenty of moments in this game, a game that the Nuggets won pretty handily, 112-97. There were plenty of moments in this game where it seemed like he was clamped up. He didn't have a good shot, and it didn't matter. There was multiple times where he just had to throw something up at the buzzer. You know what Jokic's shot looks like, the over the head, crazy looking shot. It goes in. He hit a three-pointer over him as time expired, and on the shot clock, he goes for 40 points. He outduels the entirety of the Timberwolves team, the Timberwolves team that played pretty good basketball last night. Like I said, their defense was solid. overall. If you were watching that game, the numbers don't imply it because Nikola Jokic went for 40 points, but there's certain things that when you're going against a guy like Nikola Jokic, it just does not matter what you do defensively. He's going to be able to get it in. He'll make all those tough shots. He'll be able to make that difference that you're really looking for. He's one of the best finishers of all time. Of all time, you let him get close to the basket, there's almost nothing he'll miss. He'll throw up a circus shot and you expect it to go in. That's how crazy good he is. And I don't want this to sound like a diss on Rudy Gobert, although there are plenty of Rudy Gobert. There's plenty of Rudy Gobert hate out there. But I was having this discussion. My roommate here, he's not the biggest basketball guy. He was asking me, "Hey, what's Rudy Gobert's legacy look like? Is he a Hall of Famer?" And your first thought to that question is yes, he's a Hall of Famer. He's won 4 Defensive Player of the Years, but you take a look at what he does. He doesn't have that kind of legacy, and the talk surrounding Rudy Gobert isn't, oh, he's an all-time great. It's oh, he's a rim protector. You know, he doesn't have that legacy, and I think if he wins a championship this year, it can really make a difference. But if he doesn't win that championship, and it doesn't seem like he is, because they've run into a now fully awakened uh, Denver Nuggets team that was not awake before in the beginning, that we saw the Minnesota Timberwolves go 2-0 up on. Because if the Nuggets keep playing like this, man, it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be really, really tough for them to for the Timberwolves to win a game. We saw it in Game 4. You know, you had a masterclass of a game from Anthony Edwards. He puts up 44 points, and you still can't win it. If you can't win a game with your best player scoring 44 points, and it not even really being that close down the stretch. I mean, you lose that game by 8 points, but you were down by 10, 12 points the entire second half. Uh, Mike Conley being out really hurt this Timberwolves team that already struggles a little bit defensively. And I think really the biggest factor in this comeback has been Aaron Gordon. Aaron Gordon has been playing great basketball down the stretch of this series. You know, you talk about Game 4. He goes 7 of 7 from the field, puts up 27 points. Here, this game, he has 18 points, 10 rebounds, a double double. He's been huge for them. He's making tough shots. He's playing great defense. He's being that guy that brings the energy. And the Denver Nuggets feel like they've arrived. It didn't feel that way in the Lakers series. It didn't feel that way in the beginning of this series, but it really feels like they've arrived. It feels like Nikola Jokic is here. It feels like the rest of that team is ready to go, rearing to get the job done against this Minnesota Timberwolves that finally poked the bear enough to wake them up. And it's a little scary. It's a lot scary, actually. I don't think there's a team that looks this good right now in the entire league. You can make the argument for the Celtics. You can make the argument for the Knicks that we'll talk about in the next segment, actually. But there just isn't that team that's so put together that can just seemingly get a bucket whenever they want to get a bucket. They just get it down to Jokic on the inside. Even when he's going up against the Defensive Player of the Year, it does not matter. And these, going back to Jokic for a second here, his 40 points, it wasn't like he was just chucking up shots the whole game. He was really efficient. 15 for 22 from the field. His true shooting percentage is out of the roof. I mean, you take the free throws in there as well, and he's 23 for 31. That's really, really good. And he was so close to a triple double. 3 rebounds away from a triple double. He didn't quite get the rebounds. But the most impressive number for me, and I touched on it a little bit, is the 13 assists to 0 turnovers. To be a big man with that much touch and still be able to put up 40 points, 0 turnovers on 13 assists is an insane number. That is not something that happens. Nikola Jokic is insane. He's showing why he's the best basketball player on the planet, and there just really isn't anybody that can guard him. There's no one on this planet that can guard Nikola Jokic consistently. When he decides to get aggressive, as he's started to get aggressive, more and more aggressive down the stretch of this series, we're seeing the Timberwolves really struggle. And one of the hardest things is they run that pick and roll with Jamal Murray up at the top, and they get a guy like Gobert to switch on to Murray. But it doesn't matter who Jokic is on; that's always going to be a mismatch. But if you get Murray on Gobert, that's another mismatch right there, and then you have two mismatches against a really good defensive team. The Timberwolves, who honestly are a team maybe have the best defense in the entire league. They're super switchable, super long. If there's a team that can shut down Jokic, it's them. I mean, they have Defensive Player of the Year, Rudy Gobert. They have Karl Anthony Towns, who, while not the greatest defender, is quick and long and big and can help on those double teams on the help side that we've seen them do on Jokic a lot and just has not mattered. Jokic has been able to conquer everything that they throw at him seemingly with ease. So I'm not too convinced that the Timberwolves are going to be able to bounce back in Game 6. Just with the way these last three games are going, they've lost all their momentum. Anthony Edwards is trying his best, but it's not enough. He doesn't have the help around him. This team, aside from him and the occasional Karl Anthony Towns night, they don't really have any help. There's no help offensively. If they had a certified second option for scoring, someone like if they had a Kyrie Irving on this team, I know that's not necessarily the greatest fit for this team for what they're looking at defensively, but someone with his kind of skill set offensively to be the number two to Anthony Edwards, this could be a much more interesting series, especially down the stretch. But the way it's looking right now, the Timberwolves look like they're out of gas, and the Nuggets look like they're just getting started. They're ramping up. It really seems like. So I'm about ready to call this series. Maybe the Timberwolves can steal one more at home tomorrow. We'll have to see. But Nikola Jokic is crazy. That's my big takeaway from this game. He is insane, and there's no one on this planet that can currently stop him. Uh, we'll see what happens in a couple years when Victor Wembanyama continues to develop. Maybe he can be a guy that can go toe to toe, play some defense against Nikola Jokic. But we'll have to see about that. That's not for at least another year or two. But anyway, in our next segment, we're going to continue talking some basketball. We're going to finish up our basketball coverage from last night, going to Madison Square Garden in New York, where the Knicks respond from their blowout and blow out the Pacers in kind, respond accordingly to take a 3-2 series lead in that series. So stick around. We're going to break down that game coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh, I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the fifth game of the series between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets, in which Nikola Jokic went off against the Defensive Player of the Year in Rudy Gobert. Made him look like just any normal defender, which is kind of crazy for a guy who's won 4 Defensive Player of the Year awards. But that's why Nikola Jokic has won 3 MVPs. But anyway, In this segment here coming up, we're going to talk about the Knicks and Jalen Brunson responding to their blowout in Indiana with a blowout of their own, going toe to toe with the Pacers, responding in kind, taking a 3-2 lead in the series. We'll talk about all of that in just a second. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports and you want me to talk about it here on the show, leave a comment, leave a donation with the message that's on with the website that's on the screen right now. Once again, that is gsmcpodcast.net. Appreciate you guys taking time out of your day to stick around and talk some sports with me. But like I was saying, we're going to get into some more basketball talk. We've got our second of two games that took place last night between the Knicks and the Pacers. The Pacers, the sixth seed, after tying up the series, the home team has won every single game in this series so far. The Knicks win the first two, drop the next two, and now take this one in convincing fashion. They're coming off of a game where they get blown out in Indiana, but Jalen Brunson is able to bounce back. He comes back with 44 points on relatively efficient shooting for him. I mean, he's the kind of guy, I mean, you look at some of these numbers, 35 shots in a game is insane, but that's just what you need. That's just what the Knicks have been relying on to win these games. They win this game by 30, very comfortable. And a lot of that is because if you look at the box score, you're not going to see it, but the Pacers really struggled in the second half shooting. There was a 7-minute stretch. Yes, 7-minute stretch in the third quarter where the Pacers did not score a single point. At that point, before that started, it was a 7-point game. The Knicks went on a 17-0 run, and that was it. They didn't stand a chance after that. In the beginning of the fourth quarter, they looked like they were going to make it interesting. They got it back down to 10, and then they lost it again. And the big issue in this series for the Pacers is that Tyrese Halliburton has just been disappearing. They need Tyrese Halliburton to do what Jalen Brunson has been able to do. They don't need him to put up, 35 shots a game like he has been doing, but they do need Tyrese Halliburton to step up and give you 30 points. They need Tyrese Halliburton to not show up and give you 5 for 9 from the field with 5 assists and 13 points. They need him to be a lot better than he has been. And there's a lot of other reasons for why the Pacers lost this game. Like I said, you're not going to win a game. You just aren't going to win a game when you go more than almost an entire quarter, more than half of a quarter, without scoring a single point. That's just, you can't win an NBA game like that. And the Pacers go on stretches. This is the same issue that has been happening with the Cavaliers, which is why they're on the brink of elimination against the Celtics. Their offense just disappears. And that is kind of inexcusable. It's getting to the point where, hey, you're in the second round of the playoffs. You are in the conference semifinals against the 2 seed, a 2 seed that you have shown you can beat, and you have shown you can beat handily. But you just aren't making the shots. You aren't playing the same way away from home. And the Pacers have not been a good road team. I think that's one of the bigger stories. They're 21-20 away from home in in the regular season. They're 21-20 away from home. When you get back to Indiana, they're 26-15. They're much better on home court. The Knicks also are much better on home court. Home court advantage is a huge thing in the NBA, especially Madison Square Garden. But the Knicks play better on the road than the Pacers play on the road, and we've seen that. We've seen them disappear. I mean, it's just is the kind of game that's kind of inexcusable. It's almost a mirror image from the last game, from Game 4, where the score was 121-89 as opposed to 121-91. So we're taking a look at two teams that have the ability these nights to kind of just disappear. They have they've shown that sometimes they're just not there. And for the Knicks, it's just whether or not Jalen Brunson can show up. And it's been one of the more impressive playoff runs out of a single player that I've seen in a very long time. He's on pace to break the Knicks singles playoff run record for 40-point games. He has 6 of them already in the playoffs. They've played 11 games. He gets 40 points in half of the games that they've played. That is insane. 40 points 50% of the time. That's not supposed to happen. And Jalen Brunson has been on a whole nother level. He's been carrying this team. Josh Hart has been a huge part. His energy on the board, his ability to chase down these balls, these loose balls, and make a play happen. Isaiah Hartenstein set a Knicks playoff record for offensive rebounds. He had 12 last night. Everything went good for the Knicks, and just about everything went wrong for the Pacers. If the Pacers want to win this series, if they want to show that they deserve to be here, which I think they do, they've shown it that they deserve. They have the tough shot making ability. They have the players that can step up in the clutch. I mean, you don't have to look much further than Game 3 when they hit that insane turnaround jumper to win the game, as the shot clock was expiring. It's just everybody in the world versus Jalen Brunson right now, and Jalen Brunson is on a heater. If he continues this heater every game that he plays like this, the Knicks are going to win. Point blank period. This is how they make their run. If they were healthier, this team would be scary, but they're extremely injured, and they just don't have the juice outside of Jalen Brunson. DiVincenzo has been really good. Alec Burks off the bench 2 games in a row has been solid. He's not the guy that you want 23 minutes of playoff action to get, but in a game like in a situation where the Knicks are, where they're down Bogdanovich, they're down OG Anunoby, they're down Mitchell Robinson, they're down Julius Randle, Alec Burks is going to get some minutes, and he's done solid in his minutes. He had a good shooting night, 5 for 8 from 3. That's what you need out of him. Again, Isaiah Hartenstein, really underrated role, 12 offensive rebounds, keeping the play alive, and I can't say enough about Jalen Brunson. There's no way that you can say enough about Jalen Brunson and what he has been doing for this Knicks team. It's been incredibly impressive to watch him play. It's been incredibly impressive to see how he's carrying this Knicks team. Heading into the future, like I said, the Pacers need Tyrese Halliburton to step up. If Tyrese Halliburton can play the way that we know he can play at this all-star level that we've seen him play at, they can win this series. They can. This series is going to come down to a duel between Tyrese Halliburton and Jalen Brunson. And right now, Jalen Brunson is destroying him. If Tyrese Halliburton can win these next 2 games over Jalen Brunson, they can win this series and they can move on to the conference finals against probably the Celtics. But he needs to step up, and they need to learn how to play on the road. They can't disappear. Their offense can't disappear like it has been. But overall, the Knicks bounce back. They've played an incredible game. So congratulations to the Knicks. In our next segment, we are going to move into the WNBA, actually. Caitlin Clark made her debut last night for the Indiana Fever. So we're going to talk about how her first game as a professional basketball player went, where she can improve, what she did great, and much more coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to to Sports by GSMC podcast, everybody. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the first two games, the two NBA games from last night. In our first two segments, we just finished talking about the New York Knicks and how they were able to bounce back against the Indiana Pacers to take a 3-2 series lead. And the same thing with the Nuggets continuing their dominance over the Minnesota Timberwolves as of late, extending their lead to 3-2. Let me know what you think of those series in the comments. I'd love to hear it. But in this segment right here, we are going to move into the WNBA. The opening day for the WNBA was last night. There were lots of big games, none bigger than the debut of Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark, and we'll talk about it in just a second, made her debut for the Indiana Fever. They did lose that game, and we'll break down her performance in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports that you would love me to answer, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. That link on the screen right now. Once again, GSMCPodcast.net. Leave that question for me. I will get to it. You can control what we talk about here on the show. Appreciate anything. I appreciate you taking time today to talk some sporting. But yeah, like I said, talk a little bit about the NBA right now. It's been a bit since we talked basketball. It's been since the WA draft. A little bit of a quick recap of the high ends, more in depth. Not too many surprises. With the big game of the night, Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever fall to the Connecticut Sun, 92-71. Caitlin Clark had an up and down night. In the beginning of her night, she seemed like she was a little uncomfortable. She got going early. She had a little layup go in the beginning of, but she didn't play her greatest basketball. And I'm not too worried about her. Caitlin Clark is going to be good. She's going to be really good. She had to adjust to the professional game. She's not going to show up and put up 40 points every single night. That's just not an expectation we should have. It's an expectation I think a lot of people had, and they're kind of bashing her. But the real glaring part of this is she had 10 turnovers. And that's not going to be something she does every single night. We've seen her play turnover free basketball in college, play really well, be a great passer. That's part of her game that's really kind of impressed me the most. I mean, everybody knows about her scoring. Everybody knows Caitlin Clark can pull up from anywhere and make a basket. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that she can put up 50 on you any given night. She averaged something like 40 points a game in college in their final season. It's insane, her scoring output, but also one of the more underrated parts of her game is her passing, her vision, her ability to get her teammates the ball. She had plenty, so many double doubles, triple doubles heading into it, and 10 turnovers is not going to get it done. She knows that. This is not her best game, and I'm sure she's aware of that. She'll learn from it. She said she was going to learn from it and move on. So I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. But 20 points in your debut. Again, this isn't a great team, this Indiana Fever. They had the number one overall pick for a reason. And they had the number one overall pick two years in a row, actually. So her and Aaliyah Boston both are number one overall picks back to back for Indiana. Indiana basketball as a whole didn't quite have a a great night as the Pacers also got blown out. But, the Connecticut Sun, a very, very good team. Um, excuse me. You had Bonner come out, scored, matched Caitlin Clark with 20 points. There was you had a triple double from Thomas. 13, 13, and 10. Uh, it's a very good Connecticut Suns team, and it's an Indiana Fever team with a lot of holes on it. I'm not too worried. I'm not too worried about Caitlin Clark. She'll be fine. She just needs another game. I bet you game two she'll be back to her normal self. So let's not overreact too much to her debut. There was plenty of good in there. Like I said, she scored 20 points. She led her team in points scored. 20 points. 6 of 6 from the line. She wasn't terribly efficient. 5 of 15 from the field. She was kind of just chucking up shots a little bit at the end. But I believe in her, in Caitlin Clark's ability to come back and win and be a really good player really quickly in this league. We just can't expect her to be the best immediately. She's not she's not going to be the best immediately every single time. A couple really good games from around the WNBA last night. The New York Liberty take down the Washington Mystics 85-80. As we'll finish up this segment here. New York Liberty are a very good team. Fourth quarter comeback from the Liberty. They outscore Washington by 13 points to win by 5 in that fourth quarter. Sabrina Ionescu didn't have her best shooting game. 1 from 7 from 3. Only put up 15, but her teammates were able to pick up the slack there, especially in that fourth quarter. Hamilton was huge. She, again, comeback victory, a game that looked like the Mystics were going to win. It was a really great game to watch, but big comeback for the New York Liberty. Lots of good stuff in the WNBA. That was just opening day. It's a shorter season than a lot of people realize, but keep an eye on it. We'll keep an eye on all of the major breaking news around the WNBA and anything else going around the world of basketball. But coming up next, we are going to move into baseball. We're going to talk a little bit about the power rankings. It's been 2 weeks since I did an MLB power rankings. We got a nice little graphic out there. Hopefully you guys can all see it. We'll put it up in our next segment. But stick around for that. We'll be moving into some baseball. That's coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished covering a lot of basketball. We talked about the 2 NBA playoffs games from last night, and we talked about Caitlin Clark and her debut. A little bit disappointing, but I'm sure she will bounce back. In this segment here, we're going to transition into the world of baseball, and we are going to do some power rankings. It's been about 2 weeks since we did our last power rankings. Our last power rankings was on May 2nd. So it's been exactly 13 days since we did that. So some of my up-down numbers are going to look a little crazy to people that expect every single week kind of power rankings. But we've got it all up here for you. I'll show it in just a second. But before we get into that, Remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to GSMCPodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have anything, a burning question about anything in the world of sports you would like me to talk about, go ahead and leave that in the comments. Leave that at gsmcpodcast.net. I will get to it. We'll have a little discussion, and you can control what we talk about here on the show. We appreciate any of you taking time out your Wednesday to talk some sports, sit down and listen to me. Little bit like saying, we're going to get into some MLB. Got a little graph for you. MLB power rankings. These are power rankings. Let me know if you can't see them. I'll enlarge it a little bit. But these are all 30 teams. We've got, like I said, it's been 2 weeks since last did our power rankings. So we'll start at the bottom and we will take a look at MLB. See, so at the bottom we have the Miami Marlins. I don't know if I need to say a lot here. The Miami Marlins are not a very good baseball team. They're extremely hurt, and they're saving grace on offense. Luis Arias is no longer with the team. We haven't done a power ranking since he was traded. That moves them down a spot. This is not a good year to be a Marlins fan, coming off a year where they made a surprising playoff run. But overall, not a very good year for the Marlins. They sit at 30 in the power rankings. And that means congratulations to the Chicago White Sox, who are on a little bit of a tear right now. They've just shut out the Washington Nationals 2 games in a row. They are at 29 in my power rankings here. We have the White Sox, who were on pace in our last power rankings to be the worst team of all time by win-loss record. You know, not a very good spot to be, but they're able to bounce back a little bit. They take some games against a better team in the league, someone higher, teams that's higher up in the power rankings here. And they've been on a little bit of a tear. They've got some positives. Pitching is coming back. Eric Fetty's been really good for them. He's 4-0 on the season now, with a excuse me, with a sub-3 ERA. Kind of came out of nowhere after taking a year off and pitching out in Asia. At 28, we have the Rockies. The Rockies just have been really bad. You know, they're still last in their division. Granted, it is a very good division, but still last in that division. Just not really showing any signs of life are the Colorado Rockies. 27, we have the Angels with the loss of Mike Trout. They have fallen off the cliff. They have almost no positives. Joe Adell has been solid this season, but that's kind of a silver lining that isn't really going to make a difference. You talk about the Angels the last couple seasons. You have Mike Trout, Shohei Ohtani. None of them are here. Mike Trout is on the IL. Shohei Ohtani, in case you hadn't heard, is a Dodger now. He signed a huge contract in the offseason. And the Angels, they seemed like they were on the right track with Mike Trout. He was having a resurgent beginning of the season before he got hurt, and now they just don't really have anything to keep them going. 26, we have the Athletics. They have a closer. They're not a very good team, but they have a closer, and they've got some people to trade if they would like to trade. I know they're in the midst of like a half rebuild, half tank job. I'm very confused with what the Athletics are trying to do. I don't know if they're trying to build up right now, but they've got a lot of trade candidates that they can get some solid assets for here coming up at the trade deadline. So it's not all bad, but it definitely is not good. They're not a good team. Cardinals here at 25, they drop a spot from my last power rankings. They just haven't, again, they lose Contreras to a nasty looking injury. He gets hit on the swing. They had told him to push up on the plate, and it just unfortunately did not work out. It really is quite unfortunate because he's pretty good. Wilson Contreras is. He was like that one shining bat in the order, and the rest of the bats have been struggling. The pitching, they went out and they got some like old reliable sort of pitchers, and they've been anything but old reliable. They've been old. They have not been reliable. So the Cardinals have had a very disappointing season, both batting and pitching, and they haven't really been the same since Yadier Molina left. 24, you have the Pirates. Paul Skeens made his debut. Paul Skeens looked really good. The Pirates have not looked really good. They had a kind of hot start to their season, as they tend to do, but the bats just aren't there. The defense has really struggled, and the bullpen has been bad. Paul Skeens pitched good, and that's a really good sign for them. Hopefully, he can continue to develop into an ace of a pitcher. We saw him hit 101 consistently in his first game against the Cubs, but it just it's not enough for to move him up too far. And the Nationals. The Nationals I have at 23. The Nationals are a surprising 500 team. The Nationals have been floating around that number, going up one game above it, one game below it, sitting at it. They've just dropped two to the White Sox. They've been shut out twice in a row by the White Sox now. That game just went final. So I'd probably drop them a spot below the Pirates if I had to redo this one right now. But the Nationals here at 23 are a surprisingly good team. They're not one of those teams that you're going to be scared to play. But C.J. Abrams, Luis Garcia at the top of that lineup. Trevor Williams is having a resurgent after being maybe the worst pitcher in all of baseball last season. Is having the best start to his season in his career. Some of the young arms aren't quite where you want them to be. Mitchell Parker has been solid, but he hasn't really been enough. The rest of the bats are getting there, but they're not getting it done. Luis Garcia really has come on. He's been a 300 hitter up to this point. So, congratulations to him. Very, very well, very, very well done by Luis Garcia. Uh, and at 22, we have the Giants. The Giants have been really disappointing all season. Same thing with the Reds and the Astros. Really, that group of teams, 22 to 20, have been disappointing. The Giants stay at their spot. They just injuries and the lack of bats have really hurt them. The Reds, after a hot start, have slowed down. Like I said, it's been 2 weeks since we did the rankings, so they dropped 10 spots in my rankings. I was high on them, which is also why it looks like a lot. But they've been kind of disappointing down the stretch. And the Astros, you talk about disappointment. I have them here at 20. They're up 3 spots from last week, or from 2 weeks ago. Disappointment is the word for that team. You can talk about injuries, but they still have a really young hitting core, and it just hasn't been there. Pitching has been awful. Ronel Blanco just got suspended for using sticky stuff. He was, I won't say a bright spot, but he was solid for them. He threw a no-hitter in the beginning of the season, but he hasn't really been that consistent. The Mets, Tigers, Blue Jays, Diamondbacks. You throw the Red Sox in there as well. Really, 19 to 13, I think you can put in just about any order. I have it I have Mets at 19, Tigers at 18, Blue Jays at 17, Diamondbacks at 16, Red Sox at 15, Padres at 14, and Rays at 13. They've just kind of shuffled around. You go week by week. I think any of those 7 teams could be any of those 7 places. Right now, the Rays are out on top. They've kind of had a little bit of a resurgence down the stretch. Same thing with the Padres and the Red Sox. The Mets are just mediocre, and the Tigers and the Blue Jays have been struggling a little bit down the stretch here, which gets us to the top 12, which I think is where we start to get good teams. I think these 12 teams are all good. The Royals, Brewers, Rangers, Guardians, and Mariners even. All of those teams are good. The Royals, I've been really impressed with. Bobby Witt Jr., potential MVP candidate maybe. Keep an eye out for that. Lots of good stuff going on in the Royals organization here. I have them here at 12. I have the Brewers at 11. They had a really, really hot start. They've kind of started to slip. Same thing with the Guardians. Those two teams started off really hot, and they've kind of started to slip just a little bit. The top central teams just haven't been able to keep it up. The Rangers at 10, coming off a World Series, their bats have been there, and you know they get a little bit of a boost because of that World Series. I kind of talked about the Guardians already at 9. The Mariners, I love what they have going with their starting pitching. Julio Rodriguez is starting to turn it around, and the bats are starting to get going again. They're here at 8. The Cubs and the Twins have been my biggest surprises of the season. You see here, I was low on the Twins 2 weeks ago. They move up 13 spots. They're the biggest jumps of the last 2 weeks. But the Twins here at 6 and the Cubs here at 7. Two more Central teams. The entirety of the NL and AL Central has been kind of a surprise. The top of those teams. I expected those to be weak divisions, but they've been really, really solid. The Yankees at 5, they moved down a spot, and these top 5 teams really have been the teams. Yankees, Orioles, Braves, Dodgers, Phillies. They've been the teams all season. The Yankees, I have at 5 just because the starting pitching hasn't been the greatest. They do have Clay Holmes, who has a 0 ERA a quarter way into the season, which is insane. And Juan Soto has been a huge plus for them. But I don't think they're quite as good as the Orioles, who are ahead of them at number 4. With all their young talent and their pitching, it's hard to put them much lower than 4. The Braves have some injuries, and their offense has been struggling a bit. I dropped them out of that number 1 spot for the first time in my power rankings. They're here at number 3. The Dodgers are just a juggernaut. You can't really move them much lower than 2. I almost put them at 1 here, but the Dodgers just have been so good. Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts at the top of that lineup. Freddie Freeman is there as well. There's a little bit of a hole at the bottom of the lineup, but the Dodgers have plenty of depth that they can fill that with. Plenty of guys they can call up to help fill that void. And rounding off at number 1, I have the Philadelphia Phillies, the first team to 30 wins. Their pitching has been excellent. Their defense has been average, which is why they have been so much better than every other year. Kyle Schwarber is no longer in left field. That is a huge, huge boon for the Phillies. Their bats are going earlier than usual, and their pitching has been elite all season long. They've been maybe the best pitching staff in the league. They have 4 guys whose ERA is under 3 as starters. That's unheard of in today's game with the juiced baseballs and then the higher offensive production. But we're running through the top 10 real quick. Rangers at 10, Guardians at 9, Mariners at 8, Cubs at 7, Twins at 6, Yankees at 5, Orioles 4, Braves 3, Dodgers 2, Phillies 1. If you have any thoughts about these power rankings, feel free to leave a comment. Let me know what you think. Did I do a good job? Move teams up, move teams down. I'd love to hear your opinions. But in our next segment coming up, we are going to finish off our show talking about the NFL. The schedule got released today, or part of the schedule got released today. We're still waiting on some of the schedule to come out. But we will take a look at some of the primetime international games and give a quick reaction to that. So stick around for that. We will be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished doing our MLB Power Rankings for the first quarter of the season. It's been 2 weeks since we last did that. Let me know what you think in the comments. We also talked about Caitlin Clark and her debut in the WNBA for the Indiana Fever. We talked about the two NBA games to start our show, the Knicks and the Nuggets, both going up 3-2 in their series, respectively. Let me know what you think of those in the comments as well. We're going to close out our show today talking a little football. The NFL schedule, or most of the NFL schedule, I should say, got released today. We should see everything by the end of the day today, but we're going to go through some of the big games, everything that we know so far, or some of the we're going to highlight some of the games so far, go over the international games, the holiday games, and some of the big primetime games that we do know. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message is going to pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. Again, go to gsmcpodcast.net. If you have a burning question about sports, anything you would like me to talk about, I will give you an answer. Just remember, leave a donation, leave a comment, gsmcpodcast.net. Appreciate anything you do give. I appreciate you spending time on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon talking some sports with me. But like I was saying, we are going to get into our fifth and final segment for the day, which is going to be all about NFL schedule release. NFL has been releasing leaks for the last, I'd say, about 24 to 48 hours, so we know a good amount. We don't know the full schedule. All is supposed to be coming out by the end of the day today, so we should know the full schedule then. But we're gonna do a breakdown over some of the big games that have been announced already. Obviously, the first game that was announced was a Friday game in Brazil between the Packers and the Eagles. That's the first NFL game in South America. We know all of the international games. There's 5 of them. That Friday game, September 6th, to open up the season. Or I guess the second game of the season after the Chiefs, the season opener. The Kansas City Chiefs taking on the Ravens as a rematch of the AFC Championship game. That's the first game of the season on the Thursday, and then the next day, immediately we go to Brazil for the Packers Eagles, and the rest of the international games have been announced. There's 5 of them, 3 of them in London, 1 of them in Munich, so 3 in England, 1 in Germany. 2 of them are at Tottenham, one's at Wembley. The Vikings play the Jets on October 6th. In Tottenham. Next week, the Bears and Jags go to Tottenham, and the Jags stay in London, move over to Wembley Stadium, and play the Patriots the next week, October 20th. The final international game takes place between the Panthers and the Giants on November 10th. None of these international games are particularly great. We could see a couple good ones between the Vikings, Jets, Bears, and Jags. I'm kind of high on the Bears. I want to see what Caleb Williams can do here. But the international games usually aren't the greatest. So we'll keep an eye on those. Those are the international games. We know a couple of the Week 1 games. Tom Brady is going to be in the broadcast booth for the Cowboys-Browns game in Week 1. Interesting to see how that'll go. I think it'll be good. You know, he knows a lot about football. He's pretty smart. He'll know what to talk about. I'm interested to see how he does in the broadcast booth. The first Monday night game is going to be interesting because we have Aaron Rodgers and the New York Jets once again opening up Monday night against the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, last season, Aaron Rodgers, on the 4th play of the season on Monday Night Football, was out for the season with an Achilles tear. He gets to go up against the same guy that tackled him on that play. Leonard Floyd is now on the San Francisco 49ers. Cruel twist of fate here. It's not in MetLife, so it's not like a 1-for-1, but it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Obviously, that's a big storyline. Once again, kind of going back to that exact same situation that he did when he tore his ACL 4 plays into the season. as his first stint with the New York Jets. So we'll see how that goes. Getting into week 2. We know a couple week 2. The first Thursday night football game that's on Amazon Prime is going to be between the Bills and the Dolphins. They had a bunch of really good battles last season, so that should be a lot of fun. And the Bengals are playing the Chiefs also in week 2. Now the holiday games. There's a couple different holidays. They've got Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Christmas was streamed on Netflix. I want to talk about that a little bit before we get too far, because that's an interesting choice. I know that the NFL is starting to switch more towards streaming. They had the Paramount Plus playoff games, they have their Amazon Prime Thursday night games, and now they have Netflix Christmas games, which, or not Paramount Plus, Peacock. Uh, what's it called? Peacock playoff games, and it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks that the NFL is making you pay for subscriptions to watch the games. And I know a lot of people hate this. There's ways around it. I'm sure there's ways around it. But watching these games, making them go to 3 different streaming services to get your NFL games kind of sucks. It really does. I don't want to sign up for streaming services to watch football. But that's besides the point. 2 games on Christmas. The Chiefs play the Steelers and the Ravens play the Texans. That Ravens-Texans game should be a lot of fun. The same 4 teams are going to be playing the previous Saturday, so they'll get some rest. They'll get about a week's rest, so it'll be normal since Christmas is on a Friday this year. And the Thanksgiving games, obviously we know the Cowboys and the Lions are going to play. The Cowboys are playing the Giants. They're hosting the Giants. The Dolphins are going to the Packers, and the Lions have not. We don't know who the Lions are playing yet, but Dolphins Packers, that should be a lot of fun. Look out for more schedule drop. Lots of this stuff coming out. There should be some good stuff coming up soon. We'll do a full reaction. Who got the best schedule once all the teams are out. Take a look at some bye weeks and stuff. Who had the most favorable, the best matchups. But anyway, appreciate everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Hope everybody had a great beginning of your day. But I will see you same time, same place tomorrow here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. You have a good one. Bye-bye.